So, what kind of deal did the firefighters make to endorse Cianci? That's the question that everybody asks when it comes to the endorsement game in the mayor's race in Providence, and so we shall ask the head of the firefighters union tonight, and we'll get the answer. It is a pleasure to have you aboard. Thanks very much for tuning in to the Dan York State of Mind extravaganza here. Weeknights, 7:30 and at 11:30, if you miss it early. Let's get down to the rundown, baby. I don't even have any time for any sports commentary. My Giants are just so bad. Oh, my gosh, what an egg laid. And good for the Pats. I don't know if they'll recover for Thursday. Why do they play on Thursday nights, by the way, after Sunday? I mean, there's no recovery time. None of this is in my rundown. Rock's saying, come on, dude, stay on the script. We got some polling numbers for you, baby. These are brand new from WPRI and the Projo, and some of them are predictable and some of them are predictable. Guess what? If he doesn't cry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. Some people are just not going to accept that he's running for mayor. It's very interesting. Yeah, this is, well, we'll talk about this records request. What is the records request? This is the first time in a year. It's the Cianci medical thing. Thank you, Jess. That's the first time in a year doing this show. I can't remember what I wrote about. Let's move on. I know about this. This is not good. And that's where I was for a few hours yesterday, and that's who I saw. And that's all I have to say about that until I can dig in deeper. Woo! Let's go. Let's dig in deeper. Yes, these are the exclusive WPRI Projo poll numbers that you've already seen in the early newses on Channel 12 and maybe online at projo.com. Let me just zip through them real quick. And Ted Nesi will be with me tomorrow night. There'll be governor number 2, right, tomorrow night, so we'll be able to tackle the entire state slate. This is Attorney General, and this is interesting. 46-32, that's a big gap for Peter Kilmartin, the incumbent, over Dawson Hodgson, the Republican state senator and challenger. 20% undecided is still room for him, but I have a funny feeling that some folks haven't really been paying attention to that race. You should be, and it's one of the most important races we have in this election season. I will be frank with you, I'm alarmed by that number. If usually I'm pretty peripheral when it comes to telling you who should and who shouldn't, meaning I kind of stay around the fringes a little bit. But you re-elect Peter Kilmartin, I think you're just making a huge mistake. And I'll give you another example as we dig in on this. Anyway, next race real quick. That would be Nellie Gorbea over John Carlovali. Interesting left. I mean, 30% undecided. So, but that looks like it's pretty much in hand for Nellie Gorbea. John's got no money. He's got great ideas, but he's got no money. Next one. Yes. Now this is sound the alarm. Ernie Almonte at 34%, trailing Seth Magaziner by 13% in this race. This, let me tell you, Ernie Almonte is the most qualified guy for any single candidacy, any race in Rhode Island this year. Meaning his run for treasurer, he's the most qualified guy prorated for any seat sought. That would be a shame, in my humble judgment. It really would. And next and last, Dan McKee, the Cumberland mayor, up by 9 points with a couple of other guys, the moderate party guy and the libertarian dude in there just chugging along, singing a song. So we'll break down some of those races tomorrow, too, with Ted and the governor's race and all that, so we'll have a chance to really dig in. But you're now in the know. Let's move on. No remorse. This is a conversation that I don't get what happened here. Former U.S. attorneys call this press conference. Here's the headline. Bob Correnti and Sheldon Whitehouse. Now, Bob is now a private lawyer, and Sheldon Whitehouse is your U.S. senator, right? The junior senator. Those two, and former governor and U.S. Attorney Lincoln Almond, who was on the telephone, held a press conference today, just blasting Buddy Cianci, suggesting, well, here's some of the audio.
Incredibly, he has done nothing but to make light of what he did. He jokes repeatedly that he lived in a gated community. In his book, he openly admits that he used city jobs as currency, that he rewarded his friends and supporters, and that he punished his political enemies, and stated, quote, You can't buy your enemies, but you can rent them. It was all a big joke. Mr. Cianci has shown no remorse and no sign of rehabilitation. There is every reason to believe that if he returns to City Hall, he will do the same thing again for a third time.
Well, I can't predict how Buddy Cianci would be as mayor in a third term, but I don't know what kind of remorse they're looking for. The guy doesn't think he did anything wrong, and he went to jail for 4.5 years. Despite that, you know, you can argue all day long, but these guys are asking for something that they're not going to get. He's not going to cry. He's not going to break down. He's not going to scream mea maxima culpa. He's not going to do any of those things. And Bob Correnti and the other two U.S. attorneys, you know, arguing for it doesn't make much sense politically because, again, you go back to that theme. You keep making Buddy the story. Buddy's the story. Buddy wins. By the way, they palled up with Phil West at this press conference, who was here last week, Common Cause former director, who's in the camp for Alorza. They were saying this was a nonpartisan, non-political event. They just wanted to sound the alarm that this guy was a bad guy. But you can't take politics out of this conversation, Bob. I'm going to have Bob Correnti in here if he'll take the invitation. He's a sharp guy, but this one was a laid egg, it seems to me. Anyway, you figure it out over the news cycle as we go. Next item. Records request. So on the mayoral race, which of course is the only race around, right? Here's the headline. Dan Harrop, the Republican who has single-digit polling numbers, is asking Cianci to release medical records. Here's what he told WPRO.
I'm concerned with his performance. He's not the same Buddy as he was before. He bumbles his lines. He misreads them. He forgets things. I mean, there's clearly this promise not to take city employee donations, and he forgot he said that, and it's on tape. And that's a grave concern for me.
Now, Dan's a psychiatrist, and he knows the HIPAA laws, I think. Here was Cianci's reaction.
There's no question that I battle cancer. There's no question that I got great medical care right here in the city of Providence. And we ought to celebrate that. And I would not be running for mayor of the city of Providence and take on those awesome responsibilities if my doctors did not give me a clean bill of health.
I'm just confused. Dan Harrop, is he releasing his own medical records as well? By the way, we're not talking about an Olympic athlete here. Like some of us, he could use to lose 20, 30, 40, 50. Is Mr. Harrop ready to tell us about all of the meds he takes and, you know, what his doctor is saying about him? Cianci, quite frankly, to be honest with you, has never had a bigger skip in his step. I saw the guy almost every day at the radio station. He follows me on WPRO, or did, or does. I don't know. His name's still on the radio show. Don't even ask me. I can't figure it out. But I've never seen the guy with a bigger skip in his step. You know, and messing up a word or two here and there is kind of, I mean, with all the talk these guys have to do, I mean, come on. Look, he's 73. Make your own judgment. He's had cancer. Make your own judgment. But demanding that he release his medical records is a non-starter, it seems to me. Here's the next story, and this is unbelievable. This should have led every news cycle, every media outlet around here should have run this excerpt from Newsmakers with Tim and Ted this weekend, the 1-hour debate between Dawson Hodgson, the state senator, and Peter Kilmartin, the incumbent attorney general.
Who deceived you?
Well, I believe that we had a package before us that said $150 million for an economic development program. I believe, and I have to be careful with my words because I can't talk about an ongoing criminal investigation, but I believe there are those parties who knew that some of that money was earmarked for 38 studios.
The very idea that this attorney general doesn't get that he should be recusing himself because he was a former rep during the time that this 38 studios came down, and that he voted for the loan guarantee program, and that he has to, you know, walk around with information about something that he actually cast a vote for. I don't think he did anything dirty, but he's dumb as a post when it comes to ethics and doing the right thing inside that office. Yet he leads, according to the polls, by 14 points. Holy cow, guys, get focused on this one, will you? All right. And up in Woonsocket, they had the Autumn Fest. And the politicians are always there. Alan Fung loved his visit.
It's resonating. They know what I'm trying to do to get the economy back, get people back to work, and especially up here, today's not only a day of celebration, but a day where I got a chance to meet Woonsocket voters right at their doors.
So they get that little parade in the morning, and then the thing goes, it's a 3-day event, I think. I stopped in myself yesterday. So did Gina Raimondo. She looks tired, doesn't she?
As you walk down the streets of Woonsocket, you see one thing. We need to get Rhode Islanders back to work. There's a lot of people on these sidelines that are unemployed or underemployed, and it's time to change that and get people back to work. Doing this parade, you realize there's a lot of families struggling. So it gives a real purpose to your work.
And she just, it's hard work being out there on the trail, no doubt. But, there's a little bit of condescension in that comment. Maybe it is because she's exhausted from the trail that she made those remarks. Or so you look at people and you know they're unemployed? Now, admittedly, this is not a white-collar crowd by any stretch. This is a very blue-collar crowd up there in Woonsocket, no doubt. But I don't know how you make those judgments. I think when you're so programmed to be on message about jobs, 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 you start putting your foot in your mouth just a little bit. We're going to talk about that on the radio tomorrow between noon and 3 on WPRO. But I did see Elvis. This gentleman was singing while this other gentleman decided to be his own entertainment with his... Look at the moves. See, this guy's singing, and this is... I don't know what the heck that is, to be honest with you. I was there with my family, and I said, you know what? I got to record this for posterity. Jess, get that guy on the show. When we come back, Mr. Doughty from the firefighter unit. Stay with us. Welcome back in. This was a headline that may have caused some people some surprise. I don't know. Police and fire unions endorse Buddy Cianci for Providence mayor. We are efforting the police union as we speak, but in the meantime, I bumped into Paul Doughty at a press conference the other day. Old friend of the show. Good to see you, man.
Thanks for having me.
Firefighter union president. People want to know, all right, what'd you get? What private deal is there right now between the firefighter union and Buddy Cianci for the endorsement that you blessed on him the other day?
There's no prize hiding behind the curtain. We simply took a look at the two mainstream candidates, and we took a single focus, and that was who do we think is best situated to grow the economy in the city of Providence. The job of a union leader has shifted over time, particularly when you're in a city like Providence, because not only do you have to keep one eye on the wages, benefits, working conditions of your membership, but at this point in time, we also have to keep an eye on the viability of the city.
There's a reason to have jobs.
Sure, and the better the city does, we'd like to argue that the better the firefighters should do.
All right, what is the current status of the firefighter union's deal right now? It is in what year of what?
We are midstream between a kind of a 6-year package, 2 3-year packages, but the second 3-year contract will expire in June 30th, 2017.
Okay.
So we're midterm.
So you're going to get a couple years of whatever mayor is in there before that expires. Did you talk to Cianci about his appetite for renegotiation, that kind of thing? I mean, did you talk about that kind of perspective that he may bring to the table?
Not specifically that, but we have a formal process that we use for the union to engage the candidates, give them a chance to talk to us about what they see as their vision for the city. Then obviously we have some pointed questions. We ask them about where they see them leading the city as it applies to the fire department, the employees, the tax base, things like that.
Percentage of the firefighters who actually vote in the city is?
Roughly 25 to 30%.
So this ends up being less about a get out the vote head count and more about momentum and a signature on the race, sort of.
Yeah, I think you could look at it through a couple different lenses, but I think that's a fair characterization.
The firefighter union wants to be part of the dialogue because, I mean, you don't always have to weigh in, right?
No, and in some races, particularly the last race, we didn't endorse a candidate for mayor.
So why be aggressive in this one?
I think the city's at a tipping point. We went through a rough 4-year period where we had to engage in concessionary bargaining, and that's not something that we'd like to do. And it's become more and more apparent that if we don't find leaders that are going to grow the tax base and improve the economy in Providence, that it's going to fall back on us in reduction in staffing and wages and our living conditions.
Have you seen anything specific from Buddy Cianci that would lead you to believe that he can do it any better than Jorge Elorza?
I think it comes down to one word, and that's experience. I don't think there's time for a learning curve because we have sat on top of that precipice for the last 4 years after the $110 million deficit compounded by the state of the economy across the country. And Rhode Island's first in, last out, and we're following that in this case too.
What do you think about the U.S. attorneys today that came out and said more or less that this guy can't be trusted, he's shown no remorse, and the pay-to-play thing came out from Phil West from Common Cause as they all kind of ganged up on Buddy looking for some contrition. I'm not sure if he offered some contrition that they'd accept it anyway, because people are pretty split on this. But the whole reputational thing and the idea that the experience that you talk about is really about muscling people and just doing it the wrong way.
In terms of the press conference, I think that just like we do, they look through it with a certain lens, and they look at it singularly, as we do in a lot of what we look at. So if you look through it that lens, maybe you see it. I'd also remind everyone that I think probably most of those people have been on the other end of his sharp stick, and you know there's a chance now for them to kind of get back at him. And then lastly, I think the more that people gang up on him, the better it is for him.
Well, that's always been my theory here. But what about the idea that in the past, it was pretty much proven during Plunderdome that promotions in police and fire and that kind of a place were wholly dependent on the kind of contributions you had to make to him. Aren't you concerned about that?
Well, to my recollections, there's nothing proved with the fire department.
No, not specifically.
Right. I think that's kind of the characterization of a lot of what people will use to attack Cianci.
Do you think it's more myth than reality?
I can only speak from the point of view of myself and what I know from being involved in the fire department under his mayoralship, and it's not true, not on our side.
All right, when we come back, let's talk about the actual status of the city. What it's like to fight fires these days. That's an important conversation. Stay with us. Paul Doughty is the head of the firefighter union. How long have you been running that shop right now?
I've been president for 10 years.
Okay, so you've seen just about everything. You know what, you have any perspective on the idea that there's a battle between Jorge Elorza and Buddy Cianci about how bad the city has been culturally, and there's 12 years that have existed since Cianci left, and there's no discussion of David Cicilline, who strung you out for, how many days did you have that sign on North Main where you were counting the days without a contract? How long was that?
I think it went up to almost 1,800.
It was unbelievable.
It was.
And I remember, now listen, I'm not doing your bidding. I mean, I'm always going to contest the public expenditure issue with the unions, and you know that. But I think the firefighters in Providence have generally been intellectually honest about the way you've gone about business. But let's not forget that David Cicilline, when he first ran, made all sorts of promises to this firefighter union and did not deliver. Is my history mistaken?
That's very accurate. And our fault at that time is we didn't video record, and we do that now. But a lesson learned. But there were a lot of promises made.
Did you record Cianci in the session that you had with him?
Yes.
And Tavares, for the most part, in breaking down the city's deficit, you think was a fair dealer, correct?
Yeah, and to me, the most positive attribute a leader can have that sits across the table from us is just be honest. Give us the data, share the data, and if there's no money for raises, we'll see it as well as you see it. And if there's room to move things, we'll be able to see it. But be honest, be upfront with us.
The idea, just one more political question, that Buddy Cianci is your endorsed choice. Was it the lesser of two evils is probably not the right term because Elorza is a new entity. But my view of Jorge Elorza right now is that he seems like a decent enough guy. He's horizontally conceptually sound, but he doesn't go vertically very deep on any particular issue. Did you read him the same way when you guys reviewed him?
Yes, I think he's a nice guy. I think he's very bright. I think he has no experience, and that's what I think is going to matter in the first 2 years and in the first term, is we've got to move, and we've got to move quickly to get Providence going in the right direction, and that was the singular focus that we examined all the candidates through.
What is the singular thing that people need to know about the challenge that firefighters have in the city of Providence right now? Other than that, it's a hard job and a dangerous job.
I think sometimes people forget that, unlike a lot of other cities across the country, there's a very old city. Almost all the buildings are wooden, and they're very close together. So all it takes is an instance where we have a fire and the hydrant doesn't work, or get a good wind going, or a couple buildings going, and we could lose a whole block. I've only had that happen a couple times in my career, but it can be devastating to the community.
Do you talk to the city planners and those kinds of folks about the infrastructure of the city from your perspective?
Yeah, we have a relationship with the Water Supply Board that makes sure the hydrants are maintained. We talk about raising buildings that are fallen in disrepair, either from fire or not being kept up. So there's a dialogue that's ongoing about looking at the city.
But I wonder,
in a
now
fire
that you're
protection.
talking, and this would be a subject for another day, maybe it would be important to have the firefighters actually in for like the urban redevelopment conversation, because if anybody knows, at least structurally, where the bodies are buried, it's you guys. The buildings that are bad and the buildings that are decay and the buildings that, I mean, you're out there all the time.
Every day. Every district, every fire engine and ladder are going through their district every day.
Are you bullish on the city?
I am. I think that the change in leadership is going to bring some charisma. We're known as a quirky place. This would just add to the quirkiness, but I think it brings people in.
Charisma or bad reputation, depending on your perspective, right?
Exactly.
It was a fair deal, though, you're saying, and there was nothing
No,
quid pro quo.
no promises.
No promises. There you have it. All right. Your state of mind when we come back. Thanks, Paul. Your state of mind is key to us and to everybody else. Here's how you get in touch. 228-1886. Call us, leave us a voicemail. Email us at stateofmind@myritv.com. Facebook post, tweet. Here's a voicemail.
I just got done watching the show with the executive director of the Republican Party for Rhode Island, and I thought that was a great show. You gave it to him hard. He gave back as good as he got, and that was a great back and forth.
Well, thanks. Listen, the Republican Party in the state of Rhode Island has been persona non grata on this television and radio program. They need to fight for themselves a little bit, and I thought the executive director did a very nice job. Mr. Paquin, I believe. We'll see you tomorrow. Ted Nesi will lay out all the polling data, and I'll see you on the radio at noon on WPRO. Good night.